They need things a certain way, and they're very driven to resolve things and do things to make sure that things are done in a certain way or handled in a certain way. Well, if that person can experience relief from engaging in, let's say, exercise or from cleaning, right? You'd say, you're so OCD about exercise. Well, but if exercising for an hour or even 2 hours in the morning makes somebody really calm the rest of the day and they don't need to exercise, well, then they're not necessarily true OCD. They don't necessarily have a disorder related to exercise. However, if they're exercising for 2 hours in the morning and then they find they can't concentrate on other things and their desire to exercise just increases and becomes intrusive for them, disrupting their quality of life throughout the day, well, then that's falling under the umbrella of what we would call a true disorder. Okay, so we want to highlight that because the question is about a desire to abstain from thoughts. And the question is, in your discussion with Dr. Anna Lemke, and I should just mention Dr. Anna Lemke is the director of our dual diagnosis addiction clinic at Stanford University School of Medicine. She's the author of this incredible book, Dopamine Nation, that I think everybody should read. I do believe everyone should read that book. So important for the addict and non-addict alike because it deals with basically the state of our life nowadays. We're living in this dopamine-rich world where we can quickly become dopamine depleted, which is terrible, leads to depression, in addition to things like addiction in some folks, et cetera. Anna was a guest on the podcast. You can find her episode at hubermanlab.com. Just put Anna. I think she's the only guest we've had thus far whose name is Anna. So it'll just pop up there. The entire website is searchable. But if you want to listen to that episode or watch that episode, you can access it at hubermanlab.com. The question is, in your discussion with Dr. Anna Lemke, you were talking about abstaining from people's drug of choice for 30 days to reset the dopamine reward pathway. And indeed, that is the prescriptive that Dr. Anna Lemke gives for most all addictions and for people that are suffering from mild or even severe depression related to dopamine-seeking behaviors, social media, video games, sex, food, etc. However, of course, in the instance of food or in some other addictions, you can't abstain for 30 days, right? That would be terrible to abstain for food for 30 days. I'm sure people have done it, but it is not healthy to do. Certain things like alcohol and drugs, people can abstain for 30 days in efforts to never go back to them again. There are cases of severe alcohol or opiate dependence where people can't go cold turkey or they risk dying. So there they need to really work with a physician. But the 30-day reset of the dopamine system is something that's very real and that pertains to most people. That is, it's going to be very effective for most people struggling with either behavioral, what are sometimes called process addictions, or other types of addictions, including substance abuse issues. The question continues. You said you were going to ask Anna how to abstain if your drug of choice is a thought or narrative as opposed to a substance or a behavior. The question continues. As far as I can tell, your discussion with Anna moved on before you asked her the question. Would you be able to discuss strategies for abstaining from addictive thoughts and narratives? Okay, so let's talk about intrusive thoughts. And let's start off by asking ourselves, what is a thought? Okay, in the realm of neurobiology, we have sensations, which are the processes by which our neurons, nerve cells, convert light, photons, sound waves, touch, mechanical pressure, etc., into electrical signals and chemical signals that head into our nervous system, including our brain, and then our brain, at least we think, makes sense of them and help us navigate the world that we're in. Okay, so the sensation part is a pure transformation of mechanical information, or in some cases, chemical information like smell. Chemicals, literally volatile chemicals floating around in the world, are brought into your nose, and your neurons in your olfactory bulb convert those into electrical and chemical signals that your brain can understand. Perceptions are your idea of what those signals out in the world are. Either because you're paying attention to them or for some other reason, you decide that a stop sign in front of you is red and that the sign behind it is white and that the sky is blue or cloudy. Those are perceptions. Okay, so we have sensations and perceptions. Then we have emotions, which are these things that include the mind and body that are related to neuromodulators like dopamine, serotonin, et cetera, although those chemicals do other things as well. And then, of course, we have behaviors, actions, everything from me moving my pen on a piece of paper to walking, running, et cetera. Thoughts are a fifth category of neural functioning that we really need to define, but that doesn't have as strict a definition as sensations, perceptions, or feeling or action. But thoughts are real, right? We all know this. Thoughts are real. And one way that we can define thoughts is that thoughts are perceptions that include data from the past, present, or future, okay? Or combinations of past and present, or present and future, or future and past, okay? I'm not trying to give an overly complicated definition here, but if we are going to answer a question about how to abstain from thoughts in a really direct and actionable way, we really need to address what are thoughts. So thoughts are perceptions that are generated internally, right? We don't need any external sensation in order to have a thought. We can close our eyes. We could be in sensory isolation for that matter. We can even be floating with no gravity, and we can have a thought. Thoughts tend to run pretty much automatically in the background all the time. Some people refer to this as chatter in the back of our minds in a very unstructured way. And then if we force our thoughts to be structured because we decide they need to be, or if something in our environment captures our perception, then our thoughts tend to be structured. Let me give you an example. If I'm just walking around, if there were a way in which we could broadcast my thoughts onto a screen, I hope we wouldn't do that, but those thoughts would be a mixture of semi-complete sentences and gibberish. However, if somebody stops me and says, "Hi, good to see you. What are you doing today?" and I start answering, well, then my thoughts are suddenly being driven by an external stimulus, their question, and some internal ideas, memory of who I am and what I'm doing that day, so past and present and so on. And so thoughts become structured. So when we have a question about how to abstain from thoughts, we need to be additionally specific and really pinpoint that what we're trying to do is to abstain from thoughts we don't want, presumably, either because they are too repetitive and distracting or because what's contained in those thoughts is disturbing. Okay. This is important because it gives us two answers to the questions that are highly divergent. One answer to the question of how to abstain from intrusive thoughts, thoughts that we're addicted to, is if those thoughts are merely on loop all the time and we can't stop them, but the thoughts themselves aren't particularly disturbing. So think about a song you can't get out of your head, or you keep recounting some event, but the event itself isn't very disturbing. It's just intrusive because it's there. Well, in that case, the data really point to trying to anchor your thoughts to some external stimulus. So getting into action, getting into activities that really draw your attention away from that thought. Now, you may still hear it scrolling in the background. So you might be sitting in class still hearing that loop of thoughts in the background. That's something that over time ought to wane. It ought to disappear. If we